Testing, testing.
Hello?
Hello? Get the
Hello? Hello? I gotta get where I can be seen. How come I don't have nothing but my head? Hmm.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi there.
Right there. Let me see what I got over here. Step back there. Step back. Rob Johnson's there.
So Andrew, we are at 6:01, and it looks like about everyone has signed in. Are we recording and live?
You are live and recording.
Good, then we are prepared to start a council meeting, I believe. If I could go ahead and call the meeting to order, please. And if I could ask everyone to stand for a moment of silence, and then this time, Polly, would you lead us in the pledge to the flag?
I was muted. Sorry. Pledge. I pledge allegiance
To
to
the
the
flag
flag
of the
of the
United
United States of
States
America and to the republic for which it stands,
Stands.
one
Nation.
under God,
Under God.
God,
indivisible.
sorry, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
It's hard to do. Have one person speak.
Mayor, Todd let me know he was going to run a few minutes late.
Okay. All right. Each council member should have a copy of the minutes of our last regularly scheduled meeting. If you'd like to look those over for any possible corrections or additions. I'm sorry, was that a motion to approve?
It was motion.
Okay, thank you.
Second, Mayor.
Motion made and seconded by Marvin. If there are no questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you. The minute.
Your video's up. I can see that.
Okay, can everybody hear okay? Okay. Each council member should have received a copy of our latest check register. If you'd like to look, if you could indicate by raising your hand if you've received that check register. Thank you. Next on our agenda is public comments, and we have a couple of guests on the call this evening. We will have an opportunity to hear from Rob Johnson. Rob, welcome back to a council meeting. We'll have an opportunity to hear from Rob, but I thought his comments were probably more relatable to the agenda item, Rob, rather than a public comment. So I was going to hold you until that time if you feel that's appropriate.
I agree, and thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you for welcoming me.
Yes, sir. All right. Tracy, are there any other public comments that have been received for reading to the council?
Yes, sir. I have one letter that I wanted to read, or that I was requested to read. After many discussions with Georgetown Parks and Rec, I'd like to get an official answer with input from the Georgetown City Council on when our public parks can be opened. The first response I was given was a phase 4 plan with recommendations from the governor's office for August 1st. Then it was a decision for the mayor and judge executive, and now the latest communication is when Scott County Schools return in-person classes. I'd like to know who makes the final decision with our taxpayer-funded parks. Being the parent of a second grader who has just completed their first week of virtual learning, these kids in our community need access to their parks. While we can't play on a playground, we've had all summer of Little League, gyms are open, we can participate in 4-free activities at the pavilion. Enough is enough. Our community deserves better. If you need to place a disclaimer sign at the parks, just like Lexington did, then do it. But open them up. When, and they're asked when the next public forum was for this to be discussed. And this is signed Eric McCann.
Thank you. I believe Mr. McCann sent that letter to each of the council members. And just to follow up from information I received from Kimberly Rice today from Parks and Recreation, Mr. McCann is scheduled to attend the Parks and Recreation. I'm getting real feedback. Are you all getting feedback when I'm talking?
Yeah, quite a bit. I can hardly hear.
Mayor, this is Connie. If everyone would mute and just let the person that's talking talk and be muted, you won't get the feedback.
Okay.
Just the FYI.
Good. Thank you. He is going to appear before the Parks and Recreation Board on Wednesday evening. He's on the agenda. I know their current policy is to open playgrounds when school goes back into place or in person. One very real issue that I think Parks and Recreation will have to deal with is the fact that they have heard from their insurer, who is the Kentucky League of Cities, who has let them know if they decide to make those decisions prior to the regulations being changed, they may void insurance coverage. So I think there are very real liability concerns that I'm anxious to hear what the Parks and Recreation Board, who actually has that responsibility, will decide on Wednesday. Were there any other letters or comments, Tracy?
No, sir, there were not.
Okay, I see that we have a guest, Susan Kraft. Susan, good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Can I make a comment during public comments?
Please do.
Okay. The reason I joined you all tonight, and thank you for having me, and I think these Zoom meetings are great. I'd like to make a request. I'd like to request that the porta pot be removed from Royal Springs Park. I know there's no real good location for a porta pot, but myself and several of my neighbors are experiencing, I guess, contact with the homeless population that has decided to make its home down in the area across from the old carpet building. And as we look at the porta pot, we really feel that we're enabling people to hang out in the park that are not people who are visiting the park for historical purposes or for the summer events that we used to hold prior to COVID. And I guess really over the last 6 months, I have actually made 3 phone calls to the police department. One of them had to do with drug paraphernalia that I found outside of my hedgerow on Royal Springs. The second one was a needle that I found next to my garbage can on a Monday morning when I went to take my garbage can in from having the garbage collected. And then about 2 weeks ago, I was out on my front sidewalk with my neighbor next door, and we were having a conversation, and the yelling and the screaming and the vulgarity was so loud, it sounded like they were on the corner of College and Royal Springs. And we were more afraid of whether or not somebody might be armed down there. And I called the police department, and unfortunately I called the non-emergency line and I got a closed voicemail on their phone, but it did give me a number to call. And I called, I think it was the dispatch, and I told them who I was and that, I knew they were shorthanded, but that if they had an extra patrol car on the premises anywhere downtown, they might want to take a ride down Water Street. And he actually asked me what end it was. And so when I told him, he said, yes, that they had issues.
Yes, ma'am. I will be glad to talk with the Parks Department about that issue, Susan. There is a need for some public facilities there, but we appreciate your recommendation. Surprised to see you on the call, Susan. How did you get this link?
I asked Tracy for it.
Oh, cool.
Your notice sends it out that you're having a meeting, and if anybody is interested in it, to please contact Tracy. And she sent me the link, and I'm on my phone.
I'm glad it worked. You've been the first person to do that, Susan. I was just delighted that you were able to do that. So thank you.
Okay.
Actually,
I'm sorry.
Ms. Early?
I was just going to kind of pipe in with what Susan was saying. Susan and I are kind of neighbors, a couple blocks away. And I have noticed a lot lately, even more so, the homeless situation getting so much worse at Royal Spring Park. I've seen mattresses there, bedding. At one point, there was the furniture under the pavilion. And then that got moved, but I was there last night, walking, and there, were quite a few homeless people. So it has been a problem that's been getting worse. And then, with the needles as well. And I'm just sorry you're having to go through that, Susan. So.
Well, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
My whole concern is that you and I have had a number of conversations on the prospect of having Water Street being a destination spot for eateries and shops and a go-to spot. And I can't wait till that happens and we get out of this COVID and we get back into the swing of things. But, I'm concerned that if we're going to attract business and industry down there, try to get a restaurant in where the carpet facility was. The last thing that we want to be fighting in the city is homeless people across the street. And I'm afraid we're going to turn into a Phoenix Park, downtown Lexington, if we don't get it under control now. And I know we need porta pots, maybe, and I don't want to pin it on the city, but maybe we could put them back in the parking area where we have public parking along that area. It's just a suggestion. So
I appreciate the word, Susan. Thank you for joining us tonight, and be glad for you to mute yourself and watch this process work.
Well, thank you very much. Bye.
All right, bye. Tracy, anybody else?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Under mayor's comments, I'll keep them very.
Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you not get the letter today about the Ward Hall drainage to read tonight? To share? I think all the council got it, but I think that wanted to be shared tonight.
Okay, I knew that Eddie
Mayor.
responded. I didn't know that required reading tonight, but we're happy to read it. I thought Eddie was working on that or had some report.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I went out there today and I spoke with the lady who lives there. And the problem appears to be there's a lot of building lots right next door and right behind her house.
Okay.
And so she's been getting some runoff, or stormwater runoff during after following rain events. So they didn't have any silt fences up. They need to have those put back up. They took them down to do some excavation. And I'm going to turn it over to building and code, and we'll keep an eye on that and make sure they get address all those problems.
Okay, can you give us a report back at the next meeting?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. We can still read that for the record, Karen, if you like, but hopefully there's a solution underway and homeowners have been contacted.
Well, if they've been contacted, we can wait till the next meeting, see what happens, and then if we need to read it, or we can get him on here too with the Zoom, then we'll do that.
Apparently, their building location is in a low spot. There's a lot of building all around them that's higher than they are.
Well,
so without silt fences, clearly they're going to get the bad end of that.
yeah, he sent me some pictures and sent me a little video actually of when it was raining. And I mean, it's like the problem we had in Derby Estates. I mean, it's standing in the yard, and he actually took his own money and put in some drainage in his yard to help with some of that problem, to keep it off his patio. So while we're on the front end of this, we need to get a handle on it before we're on the back end of it, like we were at Derby Estates. So yeah, we'll see what the report is for next time around.
Good. And it continues to point at the fact that Georgetown has significant stormwater problems, and they're not just located to Broadway, they're all over the place.
Well, in this particular place, the stormwater problem we have is probably due to the developer, and we're in the current development of the property. So if we can catch these things on the front end of it, we don't have as much trouble on the back end of it. So I'm glad he's contacted the administration, and I'm glad the administration has taken a quick response to it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Let's see, under, if there are no more public comments, under mayor's comments, fairly brief. Pleased to report, to confirm to you, we had told you we thought Super Recycling Day was going to occur, and it has been confirmed now. We will have our Toyota Super Recycling Day this coming Saturday from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock for Georgetown and Scott County citizens. Big deal for everybody that needs to get rid of paint or insecticides or pesticides, electronic gear, all the stuff that's really hard to find to get rid of. There will be new flyers available on our social media tomorrow, because we really want to get that word out as much as we can. Also, just for your all's information as sitting council members, we forwarded you an email today at the request of Rodney Mason, giving you the opportunity to respond to some video request. That's not city endorsed or city, just we're passing along the email to you council members, and just wanted to remind you of that opportunity. Also, very pleased to announce to the council that we have received our first reimbursement from the CARES Act, and we have received $571,000 in reimbursement for March expenses related to salaries for police and fire. So we're getting our next application ready, but we do intend to be in a position to max out the potential $2.4 million that we have available to us this year. So just one piece of good financial news, that money has, our first application, we have received the funding for it. That's all the mayor's comments I had. And if we could move into item 7 on the agenda for city attorney. The first is a real quick, I believe it'll be quick, and something the council will be ready to approve, is a resolution approving some changes to the Toyota incentive program, where we will reduce our cash flow this year we will improve our cash flow by $300,000 instead of them taking out $1.5 million from our payroll taxes. They'll only take out $1.2 million. And this $300,000 is very important because it's a part of the finance package that the finance committee is working with the council on to fund potential raises that we're discussing. So, Tracy, if you'd like to read that resolution, please.
Resolution memorializing changes to the Toyota Motor Manufacturing Kentucky Incorporated inducements recovery schedule. Whereas the city of Georgetown via resolution number 17017 approved the granting of local inducements to Toyota Motor Manufacturing Kentucky pursuant to KRS Chapter 154, Subchapter 25, and whereas TMMK has offered to amend the schedule of payments in an effort to aid the city throughout the COVID-19 crisis and other budget-related challenges. And whereas the original recovery schedule required the city to remit total annual payments of $1,500,000 for fiscal year 2021, with these payments tapering off beginning in fiscal year 2025. And whereas TMMK has provided a proposed modified recovery schedule that would reduce fiscal year 2021 total annual payments to $1,200,000 and distribute payments more evenly throughout the remaining life of the Kentucky Jobs Retention Act inducement. And whereas this proposed modification neither alters the total inducement amount to be paid nor extends the end date for the inducement agreement, and whereas this proposed modification is voluntary and shall remain subject to change until the conclusion of the TMMK Jobs Retention Agreement. Now therefore be it resolved by the city of Georgetown that the proposed change to the TMMK Jobs Retention Agreement is hereby approved. The resolution was approved by the vote of the City Council, City of Georgetown on the 14th day of September 2020.
Motion, Mayor.
Thank you. Motion's been made
Second.
and seconded. Thank you. As the resolution indicates, our end payment date is unchanged and the total amount that we pay is unchanged. But we do get a favorable cash flow for a couple of years when it's important to us. So with that said, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
I know most of you are muted, but importantly, are there any opposed? Thank you. That carries then. Now, Rob, I'm sorry we kept you waiting that long, but we're at the item B under city attorney. The council is being asked tonight to consider a municipal order authorizing a condemnation filing. In this particular case, both parties have been represented by counsel. And Mr. Johnson obviously is representing a landowner and wanted the opportunity to speak with the council. And we certainly thought that was appropriate and want Rob to represent his client as well as he can. But just some parameters, Rob, I thought would be helpful for the council is
Sure.
that we're anxious to hear your comments. And since we're not in public comments, we're not going to restrain you on time there. We'll give you the time that you need to make your point. However, I do think that a live council meeting is not the time to attempt to negotiate an easement agreement. So I'm going to ask that there be limited conversation between the council and you, unless it's for points of clarity on the things that you suggested. And then I anticipate that the council would go into executive session, Rob, to discuss. You're going to give us a great presentation about one perspective of this case, and then we're going to go into executive session and learn more about it.
Okay.
Is that reasonable to you?
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Are you ready for me to go forward?
Well, and council, this is for the South Sewer Line, the project that we've been working on for some time. I'd indicated to council for several months that easement acquisition had gone exceptionally well. There were a couple of parcels that were still outstanding. And I think this is one of the only ones outstanding. And for our timeline and for our bid purposes, we bring a request to the council tonight to begin a condemnation. And Rob, I think that sets the stage well enough. And if you take it from there, please.
Okay. Again, first of all, I appreciate you all allowing me the opportunity to speak. Obviously, it is a little strange for me to be doing this, as I used to be a member of this body back about 15 years ago, and never dreamed I'd be talking by way of Skype or Zoom or any other way like that. But anyway, I do appreciate the opportunity. And Mayor, you did indicate where this property is at. I'm sure all the council members are familiar with Mr. Jennings' property, which is at the corner of Paynes Depot Road and the bypass. And so that's the property that we're talking about. And specifically, we're talking about two things. We're talking about a purchase of property to build the sewer, to build the sewer plant. And then, and basically that's not too far away from Mr. Jennings' house. And then you're also asking to basically have an easement to be able to do what's necessary to put some sewer lines on, but also some construction. And so that's where we're at in this process. And I guess I first of all want to, acknowledge that what we're talking about is really one of the highest responsibilities of members of council. When you talk about eminent domain and you talk about the taking of someone else's property to do something for the community, and I acknowledge both those, both of those responsibilities. Obviously, and I know the council will take this very seriously. I do think it's important for the council to know, and I will not attempt to negotiate anything. I just want to make sure the council knows that we have worked very hard with the Georgetown Municipal Water and Sewer Service to get this matter taken care of. And basically, back in August of 2019, over a year ago, Mr. Jennings and I were talking with the Georgetown Municipal Water and Sewer Service in October. I sent the water service some of our conditions in order to be able to agree to some things. It was not until December of 2019 that I did receive the plans of what you all were expecting to do with this property. And then I was asked to get a meeting together with Mr. Jennings, myself, and Chase to see what we could work out. That came about a week before we actually met. We met on January the 6th. And between the time they called and asked us to schedule that January 6th meeting, we had a week to get an appraiser out there to help us figure out what the property was worth. And so we moved very fast. Within a week, we had an appraisal, sat down with Chase on January the 6th and gave him what we felt like was a fair price for the property. And I think Chase would agree that he thought it was also a fair price. We went over the conditions that we talked about. It was my understanding that the water company had pretty much agreed to most of those conditions. And so what I did was a week later on January the 13th in writing, I set those conditions out along with our offer for the amount of money and sent it to Chase by way of email, January the 13th, and said, as I understand it, this is what we talked about. This is what we're going to agree on. Now, in fairness, there was the idea that they wanted to have a chance to look at the language to make sure that they agreed with the language. But in general, it was my understanding we had an agreement as to each of the items that were on our list. We did not hear from the water company until July of 2020, almost 7 months, 6.5 or so months later. We did not hear from the water company any response whatsoever to what I had indicated in my January 13th letter. And since that time, we have had a couple phone conferences. I've sent an email back. They've sent something back. I think there's still some idea that we would like to see what we can work out. And I think it's, like I said, in January, I thought we had an agreement. And so I think it's important for council members to know that when you're thinking about what to do in this situation, that it is important to know that there is a negotiation process. And I feel that Mr. Jennings has worked very hard with me to come up with a very fair price, to come up with some fair conditions. I think it's very important for the council to know this. Mr. Jennings' family has been on this property since 1927. This property was here well before most people here in Georgetown, for sure, including myself. As you all know, I didn't get here till 1988. And so this property has been in this family for a long time. And I think it's also important to note, in talking with Mr. Langford and some other people in negotiations, there was some discussion about some other specific places around Georgetown that had these water, sewage pump stations, and that there were comments coming that there were people calling saying that they smell the sewage, and that they expected some of this to some extent. Of course, Mr. Jennings' concern is that this is going to be one of the largest sewage pump stations not too far away from his house. His house, where he's built for many years ago, he plans on living until he dies. And the nightmare for Mr. Jennings is he walks out his door every day to the smell of sewage. That's the nightmare. And so I know that the water company has indicated that in most of these situations, it's just a matter of price. It's just a matter of price. And I will tell you, in most circumstances, I agree that when you talk about condemnation, when you talk about eminent domain, you talk about what the fair price is. But I think, and I hope, that the city council, when you all make a decision and you all decide about condemnation in this place, understand that this is literally and truly not just about a price. It's about conditions, so that my client isn't the one that doesn't have to bear the stench, doesn't have to bear the stink of what most people will see as a benefit to the community. And so we recognize that. We fully recognize that. And in sticking with Mayor Prather's conditions, I'm not going to get into negotiations, and I'm not going to get into some of the things that we've talked about, but I hope that the council members understand that we've given a very fair price. And the only thing we're really stuck on right now is is a condition so that Mr. Jennings has some assurance that when he walks outside his house on a regular basis, he's not the one that bears the brunt of the community in what happens when he walks outside his door, and if he has to smell the progress. and I mean that. I mean that seriously, and he understands its progress. And nothing different than other things where community decides to take property from somebody. We understand that, but for someone who's had this property in his family for almost 100 years and expects to die on this property, he just wants some specific assurances from the water company that this is going to be done in such a way that he doesn't bear the brunt of progress for the community. And so I'm again, subject to your all's conditions, I'm willing to answer any questions. I do think if we had some more time, we probably could work this out with the water company. So I don't think the time frame is only dictated by the quick push all of a sudden to get this thing taken care of. To be clear, Mr. Jennings has done everything he could to move quickly. Within a week, we got an appraisal. Within a week, I sent a letter saying these are our stipulations. We had to wait over 6 months to hear back regarding those stipulations. And we've continually gotten back to the water company on a very quick basis every time they've contacted us about this situation. So I just hope that you all understand, when you make this huge decision on one of your most sacred votes about condemnation and eminent domain, that you know that this is not a situation where you've had a citizen who's not been working with the water company, that this is a situation where you've had somebody who's worked hard and we've responded very quickly to make sure that we do what we can to meet whatever deadlines there are out there. So I'm not going to take much more of your time. I appreciate the fact that you didn't put a time frame, but also I understand that this is not the only thing on your, this is that you all have, your time is valuable. And I do appreciate the opportunity that you all have given me to speak on behalf of Mr. Jennings. And so if you all do have questions, I'd be glad to answer any of those questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. And if any council member has a question for clarification for Rob, I certainly don't want to stop that conversation, but Devin and I did agree that there needed to be some parameters on the conversation. But if anybody has a question for clarity for Rob, I'd be happy for you to ask.
Mayor, are we going into executive session to discuss this issue? I think you all mentioned that early on.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And will Mr. Johnson be in that meeting? I guess he'd be available for it if he's not in that meeting.
He'd be available for it, but typically counsel for the other party is not in the executive session.
Yeah. Okay.
You're welcome to contact me if you have questions. I will make myself available for that purpose. But again, I realize that you're all's executive session. So to the extent you all want to communicate with me, I think Mayor Prather has my cell phone number, but
I do. Right.
I think he probably has my cell phone number, so you're welcome to call me. So.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate everything that you said. And I'd like to make the motion that we do go into executive session to talk about this amongst ourselves.
Okay. And is that wording specific enough, Devin?
No, she'll need to read from the statute. Tammy, do you have that?
Yes, I do. I move to enter executive session pursuant to KRS 61810 1C to discuss matters of proposed or litigation against on behalf of the city.
Okay, Mayor, this is my turn to jump in here. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a breakout room, and the council is going to be put into the breakout room. Everybody else on the call can stay right where they are. You'll stay in a separate room. Rob, you can stay there. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pause our recording and pause our live stream. And then I will see you all in the break room. It may take me just 2 minutes to get that.
Don't we need a second?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we need, I wasn't going to interrupt him.
Second.
Okay, before I call for the vote, I have a technical question that has real import.
Go for it.
I failed to put an executive session on this agenda.
Yeah, we talked about that. As long as the topic is noticed, going into executive session is not in itself an agenda item.
Okay, because the publisher of the paper has asked me the question. Are
Yes.
we're on good ground?
We are.
Okay. Thank you. Then all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed to that motion? Thank you. Then Andrew will take the council out. It's as if we're going down the hallway to a separate space, and you all will stay in the room and we'll be right back to you. Assuming this technology works.
You may get a prompt asking you to join the.
Everyone should have a prompt now, so you can just hit join.
Robert, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Checking.
Hey, it still says we're recording, just FYI.
Yeah, we are still recording. We're still live.
Okay.
I don't know that we're supposed to be, but just be mindful of that.
Andrew's going to fix it. I trust him.
I'll remind him.
I wasn't going to tell.
Okay, Andrew, so we're recording and live.
Looks
Andrew?
like it.
Okay.
Do you need
Yeah.
a motion to come back in, Mayor?
Could we please have a motion to resume regular session?
Hold on. Hold on just a moment. Sorry, I've got a little issue going on here. Now you're set. Sorry.
I make a motion to come back into regular Zoom session.
I'll second.
And second of all, thank you. If there are no questions, all in favor, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Thank you. We'll resume regular session. Obviously, during executive session, we discussed matters of pending potential litigation. No action was taken during that executive session. And Rob, thank you for your presentation to the council prior to and your willingness to stick around on behalf of your client afterwards.
Thank you.
Rob, I think that the council is prepared to take an action, but I think I would be remiss if I didn't express to you that the sentiment that the council has toward continuing these conversations with you on behalf of your client, even if the council takes certain actions tonight. But the council, I think, very much wishes that our lines of communication stay open between you and your client and ourselves, despite the action we may take tonight.
I appreciate that. And I do want to and I would be remiss if I didn't let you all know that Mr. Jennings is here with me. I should have said that when I spoke earlier and I didn't say that. And so I appreciate that opportunity. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And good enough. Is there a motion? You've been presented with a municipal order authorizing a condemnation filing. Does any council member wish that municipal order be read aloud? And if not, I would entertain a motion that the municipal order authorizing condemnation be approved. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. Mark's going to make the motion. Go ahead, Mark.
Mr. Showalter with the motion. Thank you.
I'll second, Mayor.
And seconded by Ms. Tackett. We've all talked about for years the gravity of any action involving condemnation and what an awesome responsibility that is for the council. So with that in mind, even though this is being done just as a municipal order, Tracy, could we do a roll call vote, please?
You're still muted, Tracy.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Showalter?
Yes.
Mrs. Tingle Sames?
No.
Mrs. Lesby Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Lesby?
Yes.
Mrs. Singer Erdley?
I abstain.
Okay, thank you. That motion carries. And again, Rob, since your client's listening, it's our hope that our communications. You're muted, Rob.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate your all's time tonight.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Item C under city attorney is second reading of an ordinance imposing a 911 service fee. I guess it'd be appropriate first, Tracy, if you would read the summary of the ordinance, and then we'll see if there's a motion and a second and go to discussion.
Wait a minute. I'd like to put an amendment on this, and the last time I tried to put an amendment in, that was said I did it too late, that I need to do it before we read it. So there's an amendment I'd like to place on this.
Okay, Devin, is it?
She can make a motion to amend.
Okay. Okay, so it's just to change the language a little bit or to add some language into it. Actually, the language is because with this tax on the fees, you know, kind of filling out people, they don't want a tax, but if it goes to the 911, most people have been very encouraged by that and are supportive of it. It's kind of like, no, I don't want a tax, but if it goes towards that, I'm happy. I'm okay with the tax because that's where they feel the need is in our community right now. So what I'd like to do is add language in there, kind of like, Devin, you can help me with this. I just wrote this down. In the effect of passing this ordinance results in savings of money not transferred from the general fund to the 911 account. Savings will be used for salaries for the first responders. So that way, we've actually got the language in here. I mean, we know what we're going to do with this and the other things that are coming up, but we've actually got the language in this that it's saying that the reason we're doing this is it's helping the 911 center, but basically it's because we're trying to generate money for our be able to pay our first responders better. And I think people are good with that because they question what government does with the money that we take from them. And I understand that. They should question that. So this way, we've actually put a tax in place that has to be used for one particular item, but because it's savings out of the general fund, we know that we've got a place for that, and we've told the public this is where we want to put that. So that's the amendment with all the other stuff I said that I'd like to put in place on this ordinance.
Can you repeat the language that you said?
Okay. In effect, the passing of this ordinance results in a savings of money not transferred from the general fund to the 911 account. Savings will be used for salaries for the first responders.
I don't know that that's, so technically this fee can only be allocated to dispatch. So anything in excess, and Stacy might have to speak to this based on her budget projections, which I believe she sent out. What you're saying is if this fee generates too much revenue, we're allocating it somewhere else. And we absolutely cannot do that. Based on the fact that we're treating it as a user fee, it can only be used for that department, which is also why we included the language about if it generates too much revenue after assessing it, we have the ability, I didn't include the language that we would reduce it, but we'll assess it every year. And if it generates too much, we'll reduce it to make it defensible.
I don't think that's what I meant to say then. What I'm saying is that yes, the 911 funds have to be used for that, but if it's but because it's putting a savings into the general fund, it's relieving that pressure off the general fund, then that money that is relieving goes into the salaries for 911 for first responders.
Does not the municipal order following this essentially say that, Devin?
It does.
But I don't think we can by ordinance. I don't think we can by ordinance allocate. That would essentially be obligating future budgets. And I don't think we can do that. I don't think it's lawful.
But you're allocating future budgets based on this ordinance. I mean, maybe I'm splitting hairs, but you're allocating future budgets on this ordinance as it is with the fee to go into 911 since we've got the graduated increase for the next 2 years.
Right. And you 100% going back to your Robert's rules thing, you're most entitled to make the motion and get a second and have a vote. I'm just legally stated. I don't think that's lawful to include that language in an ordinance.
But Devin, are we not essentially doing, I'm not disputing what you're saying though, but what Karen is requesting is essentially our goal and our plan that we've discussed for quite some time. So, I mean,
yeah, I mean,
I feel like the municipal order is
that municipal order. I would agree with you. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty clearly stated in the municipal order that this is the amount allocated to those raises, and that'll continue if it's continued to be budgeted. But all I'm saying is, from a legal perspective, that language in an ordinance obligating future budgets in that way, I don't believe to be lawful. And the prior reason, I guess I misunderstood what you said the first time, but the second reason being that you can't obligate future budgets like that.
Karen, I think your issue is covered. I really do. I mean, we emphasized that a few weeks ago when we had our first reading. You know, that was clearly stated and emphasized. And I mean, that's just a requirement of law. The money can only go towards 911. And the only reason we're going to be able to give the raises is if this passes tonight.
Well, I think we could say something to the effect, if we got the language right, that our efforts would be for, and that's not necessarily saying it's going, but the efforts would be. But back to the funds. Yeah, we're giving raises to everybody. We're not giving raises to first responders. But it's nice to be able to tell people the reason you're getting this tax is because not raises in general, but the raises because we're first responders. So this year, I think we're doing it right. Even though we're giving some other raises, we're doing it right. But maybe what my point is, I am trying to wrap up future, so we have money that's going to go for raises for first responders and not go back into the general fund just to go into the budget. Because let's say next year we have another type of a crisis comes along, well, then we're back to square one. We don't have the money that we want to have for the first responders, because with the changing in the world, now the first responders have become the most important thing that we have going on in the city. And is to get good quality people here that will stay here. So it gives them the obligation of saying, okay, well, we already know next year where the money source is going to be for the first responders, because it's going to come out of what the general fund is saved for this. So if we could put it in the ordinance, we know that that's where that money is going to come for, and then we have to work out the rest of it. But yeah, the municipal order takes care of it this year. I read through the rest of the packet to make sure that it was covered. But okay, we do well this year, but then do we throw it to the wind next year? That's the question.
Oh, what would we throw into the wind? I guess would be my question.
Something else could come up more important.
But what would we be doing differently? I'm not quite sure. I mean, the raises would be in place.
Some capital projects, something like that, any of that, it can come up. But that's why I like the obligation of knowing where the council's spending the taxpayers' money. I mean, you're definitely saying, I'm not just putting it in a general fund. Yes, it's coming out of the general fund, but we have a purpose. We have a defined purpose for raising your taxes.
Well, we do. Yeah, we do, and we have. And
Mayor, is what the initiative is, and you can only give raises from this money one time. Then next year, they're not raises anymore, but you still have the obligation. Next year takes care of itself. If you use this increased revenue to give raises now, you can only give those raises one time, Karen, because that cost follows you every year into the future. I'm sorry, I don't understand your concern.
Well, I'm sure you don't, but I didn't say raises.
Help me understand. I'm capable.
Salaries. We're doing it this year to pay raises, but what I said for the amendment was to pay salaries. So we have a place designated that we're going to pull from to be able to pay salaries.
Karen, please make a motion. Please make a motion so we can get past this.
I made the motion. Need a second.
Well, the question I guess I have is more a legal question. And I think we need to adhere to the advice of our legal counsel. We've got two of them we could call on that are with us tonight. You know, I think Devin's kind of made her comments.
I think Polly, did you second the motion?
Yes, I did.
So we have a motion on the floor. The city attorney has said it's illegal to do it. Can we call the roll?
Can I just speak for a second?
You certainly may.
Thank you. I understand where everybody's coming from on it, and I think Karen just wants the clarification in the ordinance. So, and I know the biggest thing that I have heard from people, no one, likes an extra fee, but people are fine with it as long as they know it is dedicated towards the first responder salaries. So,
thank you.
For me.
If there's no comments, Tracy, would you call the roll?
And this is for the 911 amendment.
This is for the amendment.
Do you need to say what the amendment is when you call the roll on it? Yes, she.
Yeah, I think we need Karen to make her motion again with the language, and then a second with the language, and then roll call vote. And just to clarify, if this would pass, this would constitute another first reading.
Okay, then I'll say my motion. If in effect, the passing of this ordinance results in a savings of money not transferred from the general fund to the 911 account, savings will be used for salaries for first responders.
Mayor, can I ask a question before we take a roll call vote?
Did you get a second on that? Just for the record?
I did.
Okay, go ahead, Mark.
Can I ask a question before we vote on this? Okay, I'm sorry. Just, David's asked a question. I think the mayor just responded to the question. I just want to make absolutely clear. Your recommendation is what we're getting ready to vote on is we can't do. Is that correct?
That's correct.
If you box it into just salaries, are you saying that we can't use for benefits in any way? That none of this money can go towards medical or retirement or EMS or anything else?
EMS will be a first.
Leave out the EMS. That's not proper lettering. You're saying salary only, not retirement, Social Security, any other health benefits, and so forth.
If you want a direct definition, and maybe it could be clarified, salaries to me means the total package, the benefits and all. But if you need me to clarify that language, we can clarify that language. Salary plus benefits. It's not a problem. But when I say your salary, it's your whole
I think it should be clarified if you're, I think you would be boxing yourself in if you didn't clarify it.
We can do that. First responders for salaries and benefits. So yeah, no problem.
So just make it clear that doesn't include the rest of the employees.
No, and if you look on the rest compared to what we need to, where we need to get the first responders and then have to keep them as time goes on, they need substantial salary increases. Everybody else does need increases. And that's, if I looked at Stacy's numbers right, you're talking 41,000. Maybe if you had benefits, it's a little more than that, but you're not talking about the heavy burden that the first responders actually financially do place on the city because of what, and Tammy brought up a good point, because of what she's saying with the retirement and benefits that add to that. So that way we have some, when we go to do the budget next year, we have, okay, that's right. We've got that much money because we already know what we should by next year, know exactly what that figure is, that's going to be used towards their salaries. And I'll include, as Tammy said, benefits.
Karen, the interesting thing here is, that what you're saying is what our plan is. That's what our objective is. The problem is the timing. I mean, I really wish, you've been on the council for a long time. You've served as mayor of Georgetown, and bringing something like this to us during the meeting instead of calling maybe Devin in advance and saying, hey, Devin, would this be a possibility, and kind of working through it, it kind of puts us pushes us back a little bit. I'm just kind of reeling here, trying to figure out, we want to support what you're saying, but if legally it goofs us up, which defeats the whole intent and the whole purpose of trying to get this thing approved tonight, then what's the point? So I'm a little bit perplexed, to be honest with you.
I'm not the attorney. And so you all will do what you do. But the bottom line is, for listening to the people, they want to know that this money is going to go for what it's going to go. And this year, and maybe Devin's right, this year it is going for what we intended for it to go for, basically, except for maybe $41,000.
All right. Okay.
But the next year, where's the guarantees that that's how it's going to be used for?
All right.
So
All right.
So I can tell everybody it is going to, that I voted for this tax increase and it's going for this. And when I tell them that, I'm honestly telling them the truth. But for the future, is that where it's going?
Okay.
May I make a suggestion, or I just want to say that once this is passed, the raises are going in place. That's the next thing that's going on. And then the budget amendment, and they're getting their raises starting October 1st. Once we give it to them, I'm pretty sure we're not taking them back, right? So that money that's in the general fund will continually pay those raises. Is that not a fair statement?
That's the point I was trying to make, Connie, but it's lost on some.
Oh, it's good. So let me ask Devin a real important question here. Devin, could this language be incorporated into the municipal order that we're getting ready to follow up with?
I mean, we could change the language of the municipal order, but if this council wants to express their intention to use, like Karen's described, any savings to the general fund in a certain way, I mean, I know they're really non-binding, but if the council wants to express their intentions, a resolution would be an option because resolutions won't bind future councils. So if council wanted to do something like that, I think that could be an option to be a middle ground, Karen. Like I said, I know it's not binding and that's what you're hoping for, but that's the purpose of elections, is to put people in office to make those decisions about budgets and things like that. So to bind a future council wouldn't be lawful, but for this specific council to pass a resolution expressing their intentions would be appropriate. And I'd be glad to help with that if that's something that you all are interested in.
Well, the binding the future council, are we not binding the future council with taking this tax increase? We're binding the future council for 3 years for an automatic increase before it has to come back to the council to have it up again. So that's binding.
They could revoke that fee at any time.
Right.
So no. But
and they could change the payroll as well at any time.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the most important thing that we need to do tonight is pass this ordinance amendment, whatever we're doing. We've got to give those raises out like we promised.
We do. That's definite. I mean,
And
without a doubt.
I understand where Karen's coming from, but can't we next year when it comes up, can't we automatically make a decision that that's where it's going to go to whoever's sitting on this council every year?
Hopefully, yes.
And I have a question too, and I may be wrong on this, but it's a question I want to ask the attorneys. When we assess a 911 fee, don't we have to be very careful with the language we use about what we're going to do with that money? Can we not? I mean, it's my understanding that we can't tangle this up, that we put ourselves at risk if we tangle this up, and we're only doing this so that we can do something outside of this.
Right. And the language of an ordinance assessing a user fee is critical. The use of the funds are critical. Stacy's setting up a separate account for this fee. So all funds generated by this fee will go into an account and it will stay in that account only, and it can only pay for dispatch. Any excess, like I said, over the life of the fee, we've got to continue to determine if our fee is excessive or I think we want that fee to be right on point with the expenses it covers. So it's really critical, and Stacy's got her work cut out for her, but any use of general funds is allocated via a budget ordinance, not a user fee ordinance. It's completely via budget ordinance. So.
Thank you. Should we just go ahead and vote then?
Council has before it an amendment that Ms. Ames and Ms. Early had made. We need to do a roll call vote on that amendment before we can go to the original issue. So if you all are through to discussing the amendment, I would ask Tracy to call the roll on the proposed amendment.
Okay. Mr. Thompson.
No.
Mrs. Tackett,
No.
Mr. Stein,
No.
Mr. Showalter,
No.
Mrs. Singer Erdley,
I'm sorry, I had to go get my charger. My battery's running out. What are we doing?
it's the roll call on the amendment.
To dedicate the 911 fees?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Mr. Lusby,
No.
Mrs. Lusby Mitchell,
No.
Mrs. Tinglesang,
Yes.
Okay, the motion to amend fails 6-2. Are we ready to vote on the municipal or the second reading as presented?
We've got to do the second reading and then ask for a motion and a second first.
Let's have, if Ms. Tracy would give us a summary of second reading.
Ordinance adding a new article to Georgetown Code of Ordinances, Chapter 19, providing for the imposition of a 911 service fee to support the operations of the Georgetown Scott County 911 Center. Summary 1, provides for the imposition of a monthly 911 service fee on every occupied unit in the city of Georgetown. 2, state the schedule of fees, mechanism for collection of the fees, and requirements for excess funds and revenue monitoring. 3, provides for repeal of inconsistent ordinances, severability of provisions, and an effective date upon passage of publication. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the City Clerk's Office, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324, or at www.georgetownky.gov. Introduced and publicly read for the first time August 24th, 2020. Publicly read the second time September 14th, 2020.
Motion, Mayor.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. If there are no questions, we will.
I have more questions.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Question, how much fee will this generate this year? Have we figured that out? How much was the exact amount?
I have figured out an estimate, yes.
Estimates?
I apologize, it cut out. What did you say?
What did you say?
I said that I have an estimate based on the $6 user fee beginning in December of $565,362.
Okay, that's a half a year. Right.
Yeah, seven months, yes.
All right. And you're basing that on it attached to the sewer bill, and how many sewer bills do we, I don't know how to break that down. So how many sewer bills?
Okay, we're basing that on 13,461 units being billed, which was the number we were given by GMWSS to use.
Okay, and then the apartment by units this time, right?
This does not have every apartment by unit yet. Devin can correct me if I'm wrong. That is part of what we're going to work over the next couple of months to finalize those numbers, and that's why we will have to address this annually to determine if we need to adjust the fee.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So we're working with the number that we think we know, but we don't know yet, right?
Right. We're working with that ballpark number, and I've actually worked with Whitley at Planning and Zoning. I'm sure many of you have worked with her. She's really good with the GIS. So she's given us some data on apartment units or apartment complexes and units. And then with those numbers, we're working with GMWSS to get units billed. So some of their big apartment complexes are on a master meter and some aren't. So we're coordinating with them to get those numbers as they switch their software. And this first year will be definitely a learning curve, but it'll be an opportunity to report back to the council on number of units and determine if our fee is as reasonable as we believe it to be, which as of now, I believe it to be pretty accurate and reasonable.
And is the water company, am I right? They're getting somewhere around $40,000 for doing this for us?
They're
More
getting
than that, 7%.
Up to 7% based on, they have no sense of how much manpower it's going to take to administer this. So we've just decided to work with them to determine the reasonable fee, but it's capped out at 7%.
Okay, okay, all right. So there's still some of that we don't have exact numbers on yet.
Right. I feel like we have pretty good projections, but we'll definitely be reporting back to the council on numbers as we get really closer to that perfect unit count.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions prior to the reading?
Mayor, I do have one thing, and it's one of the things that in the past that has happened, and I know that there's a lot of the police department and some of the older members of the police department, some of the older members of the fire department that have been around when the here's a small raise, be happy with that, go away, and I want to emphasize to them as well as the rest of the city employees that this is not our attempt. This is not our intention to do that. We intend to fully go through with getting the proposed raises to bring them up to where they are, the manpower and the stair step for the longevity pay as well. That is, that is something that is very that I had suffered with. I shouldn't say suffered, but I had to deal with for 20 years on city police department. You get a raise, okay, don't ask. So that's one thing I want to make sure that they understand, that this is not something that's a one-time deal. Okay, you're done. We want to follow through with this. Make sure that the manpower, the raises, and the longevity pay is put in place, and so that they get compensated truly for the job that they do for the city of Georgetown.
Thank you, Todd.
Okay, I read and I have a motion and a second. So I'm going to call the roll.
Thank you.
Mrs. Singer Erdley.
Yes.
Mr. Lusby.
Yes.
Mrs. Leslie Mitchell.
Yes.
Mrs. Tingle Sames.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett.
Yes.
Mr. Stone.
Yes.
Mr. Showalter.
Yes.
Okay. It passes. Thank you very much.
Mayor,
Yes.
if I may, I would like to ask you and Devin to put on the next council meeting to do a resolution that we're supporting this money with the 911, what Devin said we could do to compromise with the amendment that I asked for. Devin, if you would put that together for us, I'd like to put that on the agenda for the next meeting. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
Under item 8 on your agenda, human resources is a related item to the one you just talked about. And that would be a municipal order approving pay increases for city employees.
Make the
Motion, Mayor.
Motion's been made and seconded.
Second, I'm sorry.
Pardon?
I'll take the second.
David and Connie,
Yeah, it was between me and David, so it's whatever. We were there simultaneously.
I'll take the second.
Gotcha.
if there's no discussion about that municipal order, I think it's been pretty well discussed, but would be glad to take any council comment prior to calling for a vote. If not, Tracy, would you go ahead and do a roll call vote on that too?
Mr. Showalter,
Yes.
Mr. Stone,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mrs. Tingle Sames,
Yes.
Mrs. Lesby Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Lesby,
Yes.
Mrs. Singer Erdley,
Yes.
Thank you. May that passes, and may I offer my congratulations to the council. Item B under Human Resources is the second reading of an amendment to the personnel ordinance. This has to do with the fire marshal's job and the assistant fire chief job. Sponsors Mr. Showalter and Mr. Stone.
Motion, Mayor.
Motion's been made. Thank you, Mark. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
I think I need to read it.
Pardon? Okay, why don't we read it? Go ahead.
An ordinance amending the positions of Assistant Fire Chief and Fire Marshal to Assistant Fire Chief or Operations and Assistant Fire Chief of Prevention, Fire Marshal, and changing the Assistant Fire Chief of Prevention, Fire Marshal, from grade 9 to grade 10, and designating that position as exempt. Summary 1. Amend Section 2-11C of the Code of Ordinances, which sets forth the classification, associated pay grades, and authorized positions for each department to change the position of Assistant Fire Chief to Assistant Fire Chief of Operations and the position of Fire Marshal to Assistant Fire Chief of Prevention, and making the latter of these a grade 10 exempt position. 2, provides for repeal of inconsistent ordinances, severability of provisions, and an effective date upon passage and publication. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the City Clerk's Office, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324, or at www.georgetownky.gov. Introduced and publicly read for the first time August 24th, 2020. Publicly read the second time September 14th, 2020.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'm going to step out of this one.
You may. You may step out of this one. Thank you, Marvin. And now that it's been read, can I get those same two motions and seconds back again?
Motion, Mayor.
Thank
Second.
you. And the second, thank you. This is an ordinance, so we'll call the roll.
Okay. Mr. Showalter,
Yes.
Mr. Stone,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mrs. Tingle Sains,
Yes.
Mrs. Leslie Mitchell,
Yes.
Mrs. Singer Erdley,
Yes.
Mr. Lesby.
Yes.
Thank you. That is approved. What I'm pleased to tell the council tonight is that the fire chief for prevention, of course, is going to be Mr. Tim Thompson. And the fire chief for operations is going to be former battalion chief Jamie Gifford. Used an interview panel to do those, and very pleased with the council's action and us being able to put those individuals into those positions. Tim, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank
Nod
you.
your head and smile, Tim.
Thank you.
Congratulations, everybody. Good choice there.
Good. Let's see. Item C under Human Resources is first reading of an amendment to the personnel ordinance. And this is required because of some of the raises that we just gave. We moved a couple of people out of pay grades that they were in, so it requires an amendment to the personnel ordinance. The sponsors are Ms. Lesby and Mr. Showalter. Tracy?
An ordinance amending Georgetown Code of Ordinances, Article 4, Section 2-111C to increase the maximum annual compensation for grades 7 and 10 in the schedule of compensation. Summary 1. Amends Article 4, Section 2-111C of the Code of Ordinances, which sets forth the schedule of compensation to increase the maximum compensation amount for grade 7 to $65,000 and grade 10 to $83,000. 2, provides for repeal of inconsistent ordinances, severability of provisions, and an effective date upon passage and publication. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the City Clerk's Office, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324, or at www.georgetownky.gov. Introduced and publicly read for the first time September the 14th, 2020.
Thank you. Darcy, that'll constitute first reading, and we'll have second reading at our next meeting. Item 9 on your agenda, and whoever dreamed we'd have 2-page agendas. I think the COVID language at the top of the page forces us over to page 2. Under dispatch is a municipal order approving surplus property. Is there a motion for approval of that?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Polly.
Second, Mayor.
And second by Connie. If there are no questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you. Item 10, under city engineer, Eddie had a couple of things for us. I want to see Eddie's on the call. Thank you. A routine matter approving the streets in Pleasant Valley subdivision is the first municipal order. If there's a motion for approval of it.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
Second, Mayor.
And seconded. Thank you. No questions. All in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Thank you. And then the last one, it just kind of gives me a chuckle to say this. It's a municipal order approving a change order for Lanes Run Business Park, and it's a change order in our direction.
Very good.
How many times do we get to say that? We're actually closing out the project, and there was just a little dab of something left, and it's a change order that's pretty easy to approve. But delighted to report to you all that that project is now complete.
Motion for approval.
Thank you.
I'll second.
And seconded. If there are no questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And are there any opposed? Thank you. Item 11 on the agenda under finance is a first reading of a budget amendment ordinance. And what this does is tidies us up with all the things we've done to this date, including the raises that we just granted and the new revenue that we just put in place. So this budget amendment should give you an up-to-date corrected budget document as of all the actions that you just completed. So Tracy, are you ready for first reading there?
Yes, sir. An ordinance amending the annual budget ordinance for fiscal year July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2021. Summary, general fund. Prior year revenues are increased by $188,737.87. Occupational license fee revenue is increased by $300,000. Intergovernmental revenue is decreased by $994,249.63. General government expenses are increased by $107,110. City clerk expenses are increased by $1,016. Building inspection expenses are increased by $5,078. Police expenses are increased by $341,021. Fire expenses are increased by $313,162. Dispatch expenses are decreased by $1,778,871.26. Code enforcement expenses are increased by $22,539. Public works expenses are increased by $16,911. Transfers to other funds are increased by $466,522.50. 911 telecommunications fund. License and fee revenue is increased by $565,362. Intergovernmental revenue is increased by $1,150,841.49. Transfers from other funds are increased by $310,645.50. Telecommunications expenses are increased by $1,730,182.98. Other expenses are increased by $189,575.34. Drug fund. Prior year revenues are decreased by $954. State drug fund expenses are decreased by $900. Grant fund. Prior year revenues are increased by $22,230.67. Police expenses are increased by $22,230.67. Environmental services fund. Intergovernmental revenues are increased by $1,371. Transfers from other funds are increased by $148,815. Sanitation expenses are increased by $17,673. Recycling expenses are increased by $2,742. Stormwater expenses are increased by $148,815. Cemetery fund. Intergovernmental revenues are increased by $7,062. Transfers from other funds are increased by $7,062. Cemetery expenses are increased by $14,124. Capital project fund. Intergovernmental revenues are decreased by $311,296.05. Other revenues are increased by $348,500. Capital expenses are decreased by $274,092.10. All ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance are hereby repealed. This ordinance shall take effect after its passage and publication according to law. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the city clerk's office, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324, or at www.georgetownky.gov. Publicly introduced and read for the first time September 14th, 2020.
We should probably pay Tracy overtime when she has to read budget ordinance summaries. Thank you, Tracy. That'll constitute first reading of this ordinance, and we'll look forward to second reading at our next meeting. Under the police department, we have a resolution accepting a Kentucky Highway Safety Grant. And it for those of you who printed out your packet, it takes a lot of pages to give you the copy of a federal grant, which is in there. But we're pleased to accept this grant on behalf of the police department for $6,000. I see Assistant Chief Swanigan is on with us tonight. Robert, does this require any match on our part?
It does not, Mayor.
Oh, Chief Bosse, I didn't see you on the line above. Thank you.
That's okay.
All right. I appreciate you being on the call tonight, Chief. If there are no questions about that, I will entertain a motion that it be approved.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
Second.
And a second. Our police committee, hard at work. If there's no questions for Chief Bosse or the police committee, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you. Then that gets us down to the point of our agenda where we're at council comments. So what I thought I'd do is just, as I always do, I never know who's in what order, like we do when we're seating in a council meeting, but just from the top left of my screen. Polly, do you have anything tonight?
Well, yeah, just real quick. I just really want to thank everybody for all their work on everything. And I know this is, it's not, meeting, what the average amount is that they should be paid, but it's a very good first step. And I know that everyone that I've talked to at the police and fire are very, very appreciative. And I think it's, it's a very good thing, and we'll keep working and plugging to make that average, 3,600 more for the police and 6,000 more for the fire. But I just really want to thank everybody, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mark?
I'm good. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Karen?
Yes. Did we get anything back? And maybe you sent it to me. I have problems with my emails. But did we get anything back on where the AT&T towers were going to be located? Did we get a map from them?
In fact, Eddie and I talked today about that, and thank you for reminding me. I meant to mention this during Mayor's comments, that Eddie is being asked about approval of the permit for AT&T to move forward. And we're learning from I think Devin and Andrew that there are very few regulatory requirements that stop us from issuing those permits. But I wanted to give the council a heads up tonight that that's closer than it was. And I knew that you all had taken some comments from folks. Eddie has gotten a confirmation from AT&T that for some of these poles that might be a standalone. I know one homeowner was concerned about a standalone pole, looked like it was in their front yard. Mm-hmm. Our ability to either put a light or a banner on that is a possibility to do at our expense. But Karen, that's imminent unless there is other questions that we need to answer for Eddie.
Mayor, I'll piggyback on what you just said. Karen, I forwarded, and this has been a bit, and I'm really blanking on her name. She sent that information after the meeting. Holly Spade, excuse me.
Yeah, Holly.
I had forwarded some information, and if that email did not contain everything you need, please let me know, and I'd be glad to forward that again. But also the Planning Commission at their meeting, I guess it was earlier this week, maybe end of last week, considered some regulations that we're allowed to undertake. Like Mayor said, we're very limited, but they're considering some of those. And I think that'll be coming to council for consideration. But as far as this batch, like Mayor said, it's pretty much, they're going to have to be approved here in the near future. But future towers would be subject to these regulations should the council adopt them. So I think you should expect to see that next meeting. But like Mayor said, this round of this application is probably going to be approved here soon.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'll go back and look and see if I see that email. If not, I'll respond to you and you can send it to me again. And as since Eddie's on here, Rocky Creek Reserve area is 3 phases apparently. The first phase is almost complete. There's really only one. There's 3 lots for sale, but there's really only one that's viable. And so I was wondering if he could check on and see when the streetlights were going to go into that section, because it really is dark there at nighttime. So some of the homeowners were asking about that.
Sure. Whenever we get, I believe that request has already been made to KU. We've already given the work order and sent that out.
Okay.
And they have some time that they're in the process right now of converting to these LED style lights. It's a different type of light than they've used in the past, and they're on some back order issues getting the new lights in. But I believe all of the Rocky Creek has been called in, but I'll confirm that.
Okay. And this is the reserve part of Rocky Creek.
Okay.
So I know it's set up in 1, 2, 3 phases. Actually, Ball Home just got the 3rd phase. So, but the first phase is basically complete. So I was just wondering about that. So, and then okay.
Oh, I believe they've been called in, but I'll confirm that.
Okay, thank you. And then that kind of leads to the 3rd thing, is this increase in crime in Georgetown that we're seeing a lot of, and there's a lot of homeless. Susan made the comment about the homeless that she's having to deal with down at the park. I actually got a call from a citizen. It was a couple of weeks ago, but somebody had OD'd or they were passed out or whatever in their truck, 2 people in the truck on the side of the street on Water Street. So I told them to call wasn't nothing I could do about it. So I told them to call the police, but I did drive down there and the police looked like they took one person to the hospital and the other person they let go. So I went ahead and walked down Water Street, and in the park, there was, like she said, there was a bunch of people that you knew were homeless hanging out in there. And one of the people that they let go out of the truck, maybe he was just asleep, they let him go. He walked down there with the other kind of group or gang that was down there. And then on this side of town, on the east side of town, there is a ton of homeless people showing up around here. And the area that is behind Big Lots, the pathway that goes across under the creek, that trail that goes under there. I mean, there's like tent cities setting up. The other day, there was like this huge laundry that was being, I guess they washed it at the creek and was hanging it out across there. So we've got a major, major problem. And it seems like it's really developed all this increased violence. There's crime and then there's violence. And what we're having is violence, and then we're having all this homeless situation going on, and it's going to get out of control if we don't figure out something that we can do about this. So, Mayor, I'm seriously laying this at your lap, because you're going to have to work with the police department on this to come up with something as to how this is going to be addressed, because we can't let this go on. It's really gotten out of control in the last. COVID has something to do with it. I personally feel like the needle exchange has had a lot to do with it. But regardless what the circumstances is, what's causing it, we can't let Georgetown become a place that people that are homeless think, oh, that's the best place to go, because we can have Tent City and wash our clothes in the creek and do all that, because it's going to hurt everything else in Georgetown. And the increase of drugs and needles being found on the street is not going to play good for our pretty Georgetown that we have, because we do have a beautiful Georgetown. So I just wanted to say, I really think that's our problem of the future. And we need to start addressing it and working on figuring out. But for now, it lays in your lap and with the police department. But if there's anything I can do to help with that, I'll be happy to, because we need to get on it and get on it now. So that's all I've got to say.
Thank you for being aware of that issue, Karen. I've been talking about, we have a homelessness issue that for over a year now that is in every neighborhood in Georgetown. But one comment you made, I'm going to ask Chief Bossy to respond to, Karen. You've stated on a couple occasions that you believe our crime rate is in part because of a needle exchange program. And Chief Bossy has been asked that question specifically repeated in police committee meetings. And he has an answer that is very different from what you're suggesting. Chief Bossy, could you please speak to whether the needle exchange program is the reason for our violence and our problems?
Yes, sir. There is no correlation between that we know of between the needle exchange program and crime in the city of Georgetown. However, I am glad that you offered to help because we are in dire need of more police officers, and under normal circumstances, like you've described, we would form a task force and we would put those officers on that very mission. So that's a very, very, your offer to help is we're very open to that.
Well, that is why I voted for a tax increase tonight that I normally would never have voted for. So that's the whole reason why, is because I am so aware of what's going on in the nation, and it's coming to this small town. And I have preached about that. Whatever happens in the big cities, Seattle's and places like that, the people think, oh, they'll never come to Georgetown. Never. Well, it's coming, and it's getting very prevalent, and getting more police officers, getting better pay. That's a start. That's a good start to it. I still can't believe when I see needles laying all over Georgetown that the needle exchange hadn't had anything to do with it. But if you say not, so be it. But we've got to get a handle on it, regardless whether we don't have time to wait for the task force. We need to get a handle on it now and start that process. No, we're not going to put up with having that kind of stuff going on in Georgetown. That is not the city that I was raised in, and that is not the city I want to see happen. I don't want it to be that big city that we've got to put up with that kind of stuff. I was getting ready to say with that kind of crap, and that's what they put up with in big cities, and I don't want that here. So, yes, I will help you.
Totally. Thank you.
And I'd also like to add that Judge Covington has had a task force that has been actively working on identifying sources and root causes of homelessness and what solutions might be. I'm very proud of the fact that our city attorney has been serving on that task force with Judge Covington. It's not like this is a new problem that we just woke up to and we're aware of.
Well, I'm glad you woke up aware of it, but it's getting worse day by day by day. And
well, I heard you, and I'm telling you that there's a lot going on. Thank you for your attention to the problem.
Well, I'd love to be a part of that force.
Mayor, can I ask Chief Bossy? Hey, Mayor.
Are you through, Karen?
Yes, sir.
Thank
Mayor.
you.
Hey, Mayor.
Yes,
can
sir.
I have Chief Bossy? I'm sorry. Can I ask Chief Bossy a follow-up question?
Please do.
Chief Bossy, were there needles found in Georgetown before the needle exchange program was passed?
Well, sure. Yes, sir.
In all parts of Georgetown. It wasn't isolated to one area.
It
They
was
were found
not.
parts.
We've been very much aware of the fact that there were needles in many different locations around the city.
So you found them, they continue to be found now as they were before the needle exchange program was passed.
Yes, sir. They do.
Tammy?
I want to say something about the homeless situation. There's so much that we can do as members of the city council, but it is a problem. And I do know that there are churches and religious affiliations that work on that problem continuously. And I feel very strongly that anybody's desire to be a homeless person, we do have a problem. We do need to work on it, and we need to be a part of the solution. So that's my thought on that. I do want to say that it has been a pleasure to work with everyone. on the raises and one fee. For me, it's been an opportunity to see how we can work together professionally and make steps in the right direction that will benefit our community. And I've been very proud of the way that we work together on this. And so I do want to say to our chiefs that this is a first step, and there are more steps to follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Mhm. How about Connie?
Mayor, I want to thank Eddie for, first of all, this morning when we got that email and I forwarded to him and you, that he got on that issue real quick over at Ward Hall Estates and contacted the person, because communication is key to all of that. So Eddie, I appreciate all the hard work and how you respond so quickly to everything when there's an issue. And I also want to thank Stacy for all the hard work she's done and all the time she set and gave us information and numbers for us to be able to make this decision that we've made together. And I want to thank Chief Bossy and Chief Eric and Tim for all of their input and help, and all of the council people that we've worked together and made this happen. And I'm like Tammy, this is the first step. And also I'm aware of the homeless situation and the needle exchange and the drug thing that's going on. There's been a couple of people just recently that have lost their children to ODs in my church, best friends of mine. It's not something that goes away, and it's something that, that we are aware of, and it's been there for a while. So if there's a task force or something going on out there that I can be a part of that, I would be more than happy to do that. But, and also, Mayor, I just want to tell you, thank you for your leadership and everything that you do as well. And that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Connie. Marvin?
Well, this council needs to be pretty proud of what they did tonight for our first responders. It's something that we've talked about. We finally made the first step, and we have other steps to make. And Mayor, thank you for your guidance, and Stacy for your work on this. But these gentlemen and ladies needed what we did tonight, and we need to do more whenever we can. I understand where Karen's coming from about the 911 fee. About it would be nice if we could use that money every year for raises for them, and maybe down the road we can figure out somehow we can adjust something to make this work. Y'all have a great evening.
Thank you, Marvin. Tim, let us offer congratulations to you. Stacy, thanks for all your help through all this. And then Todd.
Thank you, sir. I do have a question for Chief Bossy. How is the application process with the certified officers? Are we still, I know once upon a time we were getting, not that long ago, we were getting a pretty heavy flow of certified officers. Is it still that way, or?
No, we're having trouble attracting certified people right now. We have some in our process that we're doing backgrounds on. One of the best solutions we've had is our to offer our retired program. That brings them in at a little higher salary. So we've gotten some pretty good response on that.
Yeah, I know that there was one that just came through the process and he was turned down, and he would have been a great addition. I don't know what the background was, but Steve Morse with the Lexington Airport, that would have been a great addition with the knowledge and experience that he has, not only as an officer, but firefighter, EMT, and accident reconstructionist with the aircraft investigation as well. So I don't know what happened with background, or the application process, but I wish that one could have worked out. But hopefully we can continue to get more people in.
Well, just for your knowledge, there was no Steve Morse in our certified process
Really? Okay.
And maybe he just didn't put in.
Okay. Okay.
Put it in again.
Okay. I
Take a
will
look at it.
let him know.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if I can just add for you, after your action tonight, all the hard work that went into everything and the vote that you took tonight, I'll be able to re-advertise our positions with this higher pay rate. So I think that that will generate some new activity for us, and we'll get on that as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
Yes,
Good
sir,
work,
Todd.
everybody.
Yeah, man. David?
Mayor, like everyone else, I want to thank you and your administrative team for the time, the effort that's gone into bringing this 911 feed to us tonight. And I want to thank the council for their action. I know it's not easy to support an increase that's, even though it's a fee, it's essentially a tax, but it was much needed and it was something we had to do. And it was a big first step. And I know the employees, especially the emergency responders, appreciate this. And I honestly think the community will as well. It's going to certainly allow us to make Georgetown a safer place and deal with many of the problems that we're all talking about. So anyway, thank you all for that. I'll leave it at there, Mayor.
Good. And my congratulations to a city council that worked through an extremely difficult issue with a lot of different points of view and ended up with a unanimous vote. That's a pretty remarkable thing. So I congratulate you there. And I'd also like to acknowledge at the tail end of this process, the leadership that the Finance Committee picked up during a time when it was important that they do so. And I'm glad that they did. Is there anything else to come before the council this evening?
Mayor, I just want to say thank you for that, and also tell you that the team that you have up there in City Hall, it's a well-greased old machine, and it's good. They're really good at what they do, and I appreciate all of them. I didn't mention them all, but I do appreciate them. They're right there anytime we have a question. I just wanted to say that, so thank you, that's all.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. They deserve a little love occasionally. So with that, if there's nothing to come before the council meeting this evening, we will stand adjourned.